Hello everyone, I am Kelly Egiga. On September 15, 1977, Nigerian writer of novels, short stories and poems, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie drew her first breath from the coal city of Enugu State. And that's why we are here to hear her unique insights and experiences as a global storyteller and a feminist icon. And that's how we welcome you to the program. Let's get things started. It's my second visit to the coal city in southeast Nigeria. A city with a unique blend of historical significance and where the hills remember the footsteps of the past. My mission here is to catch up with acclaimed Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, who is currently on her Dream Counts homecoming tour, her first novel in 12 years. It's a breath of fresh air, and the serenity here is nostalgic. The renowned writer is the headline speaker of the inaugural grand finale of Things Fall Apart Festival. And her arrival here at the event creates a wild frenzy.
Please, let us welcome Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Keep it coming, keep it coming, keep it coming.
As Igbo people, we often speak of political marginalization. Whenever you're gathered among Igbo people, the next thing you hear is marginalization. They're marginalizing us. We should talk about marginalization. I think any honest assessment of Nigerian history since 1970 must acknowledge the political marginalization that Igbo people have suffered. But it is time to suspend the subject of marginalization until we have cleaned house. We are giving those who want to marginalize us even more reasons to justify that marginalization. We must first clean house. Part of that house cleaning must involve a concerted return to unity. We must unite. We must unite. Unity is not the absence of difference. Unity does not mean that we all agree on everything. Unity means a decision to come together for a greater goal despite our differences. Unity is a beautiful act of sheer will. Unity is an act of intelligence. Unity comes from the ability to think lucidly. If all of the governors of the Igbo-speaking states and all of the senators from the Igbo states decided to come together in unity and put away party affiliations, it would confer on Igbo land a great bargaining power for policies that will benefit all of Igbo land. Different ethnic groups in multi-ethnic countries across the world all engage in this kind of political bargaining. But for this to happen for Igbo land, there must be unity.
Chimamanda is one of the most powerful voices of our generation, and she takes a moment to listen to this 11-year-old aspiring writer who is here not just to hear her speak, but to learn, to understand, and to hope.
I've been trying to write a specific novel, but anytime I give it to anybody to read, they say it's mostly like very fictional, and I should work on the fiction, I should make it more realistic. But anytime I try to make it realistic, it just keeps going back to the way it was. I wanted to ask if there's any advice or how I can get your contact. So you can call.
When people tell you that, tell them they don't know what they're talking about. The only thing you need to do is to tell your story well. Tell it with detail, make the story interesting, think about what your character looks like, thinks about. When people are telling you realistic, don't pay attention to them. Focus on the story that you're writing.
The Nigerian author has won numerous accolades for her works, including General Literature Prizes and academic honors. Her short stories have garnered multiple awards all around the world.
Literary sensation and feminist icon Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
I don't speak to provoke. I speak because I think our time on earth is short. Each moment we say what we do not mean because we imagine that is what somebody wants us to say, then we are wasting our time on earth.
Nigerian writer and indeed a global voice in the world of literature, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us on Channel TV.
Thank you.
You are back to the coal city, the place you say you first drew your first breath in 1977. How does it feel to be back home?
It feels like a homecoming. It's a very lovely feeling. So I would come to Enugu from time to time in the past. But I think for me, it's coming back to Enugu with my new novel that has been just such a heartwarming and heart-filling experience. It just felt so meaningful. All of my events have been meaningful. It's always lovely for me to meet my fans, but it's different here in Enugu. There's just there's an extra thing. There's something about being home.
And walk us through some of those memories growing up in Nsukka, because I imagine that it brings back a lot of memories for you. Talk to us about that and perhaps the role your parents played in shaping the woman that you are today.
Well, everything I am that is good came from my parents. I was very fortunate to have the loveliest parents. My father was a good man in all forms of the word, but also he was a good father. And my mother, I often say that if there's reincarnation, I want her to be my mother in my next life. So my parents taught us, my siblings and me, the value of education, which has been so central in my life. I mean, and education in a very broad sense, not just a formal education, but learning. This idea that you just constantly learn every day. But also just love, unconditional love. I think there's nothing that a child needs more than to know that the child is loved. And being loved means that you have confidence to be yourself. You feel secure. You don't feel that you have to perform your life. You don't feel that you have to go looking for other people's approval because you're loved and loved well. And as a writer, I mean, my beginnings, of course, happened in Nsukka. I started writing in Nsukka when I was maybe 4 or 5. And my parents just allowed me. They clearly saw that this was a child who was, I guess, a bit different, And they gave me room to be. My mother, I remember, before classes would start every term, when you would go buy the books that you need and ruler and pencil and eraser, my mother always bought extra exercise books for me to write my stories in.
And your siblings?
No, I'm the only one who's strange and a little crazy. Everybody else is normal and nobody else writes. My sister is a doctor, a sister is a pharmacist, a brother is an engineer, a brother is a computer person. They, in many ways also education is important to them, but they're not. I'm the only one who's kind of the creative one, the one who.
Just before we get to talk about your books a bit more, I heard someone saying, I brought okpa for Chimamanda. So I'm just wondering what perhaps your favorite meal is. Is it okpa or abacha?
No, I'm not abacha, it's just okay. I just know.
Okay.
Okpa? Of course it's okpa. There's no question of it. Yesterday, all I could think about was, where's the okpa? Where's the okpa? And no, I love okpa. I talk about this all the time because I think that it's a love I want to share so people can join in the glory of it. So definitely. I had okpa yesterday. I'm looking forward to okpa again today and tomorrow.
Whoa.
And I'm taking some back to Lagos.
Okay, we're going to have one. I'm sure we'll get to try it before we leave.
Oh,
Are
you serious? You haven't had... Oh, you're missing
I haven't,
out.
but we'll try it before we leave.
No, you must.
You got 25 rejections about your first novel, Purple Hibiscus. So I'm just wondering, perhaps walk us through the backstory. A lot of us, that came to us as a surprise. Walk us through the backstory, how it felt. Was there ever a time you thought, perhaps, I should quit writing?
No, the thought of quitting writing is never an option for me because writing is my vocation. Writing is really what I believe I'm here to do, and that can seem, it's a bit spiritual. I feel that it's a gift that I was given, and so even if I hadn't been published, I would still be writing today. So the idea of giving up writing was never an option, but it was very, very, it was demoralizing. I started out, so I had written this novel, and I was at the time a college student in the US. I was living in my sister's house. I was helping take care of my nephew. I was a full-time student, and I was writing my novel. And when I was done writing the novel, I thought this novel is good. I'm sure somebody will publish it very quickly. So I started sending it out. I sent out, and usually at the time, this was before email was really a thing. So you would send it out physically and include an envelope addressed to yourself. And I had read all the books about how to get published, and you were advised to send out in batches of 4 or 5, just to increase your chances. So the first batch of 5, and then you go to this book called The Writer's Marketplace, and you would look at different publishers and agents who were interested in such things as literary fiction, or what at the time in the US was called ethnic fiction. So I made a list of those, started sending out. And my first batch, I felt very confident. I felt, I'm sure 4 people will say yes, if not even 5. So when I got the first 5 rejections, I was shocked. I was genuinely shocked. But I think it was very good for me because it then made me a lot more practical and a lot less overconfident about what publishing meant in America. And it taught me lessons. So actually, I went back and I read more about, statistics of publishing, how many first-time writers get, that kind of thing. But I kept sending out. So each time I'll go check the mail, I'd see my name on the address, my heart would be beating, it would be another no. And actually, the woman who then ended up saying yes to me. So in the US, New York is the center of publishing.
Okay.
Ideally, you want to have an editor and an agent in New York. All of the New York people turned me down. So at some point I decided maybe we should, expand our geographical
hope. And so I then decided to try an agent in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is really not a publishing hub. It's really very government focused. But this woman, she's the one who finally said yes. And she started by telling me in a letter that, she said, your writing is beautiful, the story is captivating, but I don't think it will be easy for us to sell you because nobody knows this place that you're writing about. You're not like anybody who's publishing now. And, so she listed all the negatives and then she finally said, but I will take a chance on you. And so that's how I got my first agent.
I have read about 3 or 4 of your books, Purple Hibiscus, Half of a Yellow Sun, Americana, and then there's Dream Count. I'm just wondering which perhaps was the most difficult for you to pull through, because it's been about 10 years or more. So which was perhaps the most difficult for you to write?
No, all of them were. But this is the thing, it's difficult to compare because there's such different things and the processes are all different. So Dream Count is my first novel in actually 12 years, which is a long time, as we all know. But it's not as though I was working on it for 12 years. It's that for a number of years I could not write. So I had what people call writer's block. But if I were really forced to, it's difficult to talk about which was the most difficult, honestly. Half of a Yellow Sun was difficult for different reasons. Reasons that are different from why Dream Count was difficult and why Americana was the novel that I had the most fun writing because I laughed a lot. And I'm not sure whether it's normal to laugh at your own jokes, but I would write something and laugh. Half of a Yellow Sun was difficult because it was based on research and based on my family's experiences, very difficult experiences in the Nigerian Biafran War. So that was difficult. Dream Count was difficult because I had gone through this terrible period of writer's block. And so I came to Dream Count with both expectation and anxiety. So it was difficult. So it's difficult to talk about how difficult, or rather, it's difficult to talk about the most difficult. Because I think creating is just, it takes something from you. It asks a lot of you as well.
So how are you able to manage that when you go through that phase of experiencing that block? Perhaps nothing seems to be coming.
Yeah.
How are you able to manage that? And then the second part of my question would be, I heard just a moment ago say that sometimes when the spirit starts calling you, it can be very, very, very upsetting or addictive. I'm wondering in my mind, okay, how is she able to balance her family at that point because she's not wanting to lose her thoughts and all of that?
This is if you want to write, you have to make sure you have a support system around you. So my being obsessive meant that I did not, for example, spend as much time with family as I ordinarily would, especially with my children, which, they're my everything. And so it meant that I had family members who stepped in. So I'm very fortunate to have, the husband who's very present. I have a wonderful cousin who pretty much came in and just took care of my children because I was just locked up working. And I would take little breaks to go see them and then I'm back to writing. Because it's like being, in some ways, it's like being, I don't want to say possessed, because in Nigeria, once you use that word, people become very Pentecostal. Yeah. But if I do say possessed, I mean it's not in the sort of, it's demonic, but in the sort of way that you are, that everything becomes owned by this desire to write. Right? That in some ways you no longer own yourself. Yeah. You're owned by this desire. And so I just could not wait to get back to the work. And sometimes with family members who didn't understand, I just could not stand it when somebody would knock on the door when I was in the middle of something, because it pushed me out of my creative zone. And it annoyed me unbearably. And you have people who love you who are thinking, but we just came to say hello briefly. And I'm thinking, no, you cannot come to say hello briefly.
Not at this time.
No, this is not the time. Yes.
So, I'm really very worried about the younger generation, my generation. I think that we are either not reading enough as we should, or we do not have the kind of attention span. It's easier for my generation to flip through their phones, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, than to pick up a novel and read from start to finish. How worried are you?
I'm reasonably worried, but I also don't think it's a Nigeria-only problem. It's a worldwide problem. And I think it's the result of unwillingness as a society to question these companies in San Francisco that are run by young men who might not be the most emotionally literate or the most emotionally intelligent people, deciding for us what our future as human beings will be. Right? So in other words, AI is an example. Everybody's sort of making noise about AI. I think that we really need to collectively sit down as a human race and think about what we want AI to be. Otherwise, it's going to destroy creativity. It's just not going to be good for us. I think the same thing with social media. When social media came up, we were told it was going to unite people, everyone would get along, but it hasn't. In fact, the higher, so studies have shown, and this study was conducted in Western countries, but I think it's true really for everywhere, that for young people, the more social media you consume, the more likely you are to be depressed and anxious.
Yeah.
Because social media isn't real in many ways. And when you're young and impressionable and you spend so much time on social media, it's bad for you mentally. So that worries me. Reading, and of course, social media also rewires our brains. So that's why young people don't have good attention spans. It's from too much sort of short-term screen things that just rewires your brain, so you're not able to focus. So that worries me. But at the same time, I think we can fix it. I think it's possible to change it if we are determined. I know that there's a movement now in the US to, and I think it's France also that has, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but there's a country that has passed a law which a child has to be 16 before they can get Instagram and Twitter and whatever, which I think is very good. Actually, I would make it 21. I'll make it 55.
Whoa. I'm not sure if I saw that story. I think it's Switzerland or one of them, right? I saw that story.
Because if people, social media is okay if you can consume it in little bites, but the whole idea of social media is to be addictive. I mean, it's a feature of social media that it is built to be addictive. It is built to reduce your attention span. That is the point. That is the goal. So the longer you stay on social media, the higher the revenue from ads that the social media companies get. So in other words, you're being used, and we don't seem to realize that, your generation. But I think the more education people have, so now there are many parents who are being very careful and intentional about their kids and social media. Schools in the US are now saying no phones for young people. I think things like that, if it gains momentum, we can change it. So people start to understand what this whole thing actually means. You should not wake up and start looking at your phone until the end of the day. It's just bad for you on every level.
Let's talk about dream counts. For people who do not like to read, why should they read Dream Count?
Because it will make them like to read. They should read. Well, first of all, I want to address the not liking to read. I don't think that's... people tell me actually quite proudly, I don't like reading. And I just find that shocking. It's like you're saying you're happy to pronounce your own... we don't usually promote our faults and our flaws. But somehow people don't think of it in this country as a flaw. So they will talk about it very happily. I don't read. I don't like to read. I'm thinking, that's actually crazy. You're actually telling me how limited your intelligence is. That's really what it is. Yeah. But yes, people who don't like to read should read, and not just Dream Count, because reading is good for you in all kinds of ways. I can understand people who say, I haven't found a book that I really like. Keep trying. There's a book out there in the world for you. Dream Count might be that book. Dream Count, I think, is a book. It's a book about women, but I think it's a book for women and men. So it's a kind of sort of intimate study, a very direct, intimate, honest, and I hope interesting study of 4 women's lives. And I think that there's something literature does for us that nothing else does for us. Literature takes us into the human mind. Literature is the one art form that takes you into the person. You can look at beautiful visual art, but you're from the outside. You listen to music, it's from the outside. You read literature, you go into the characters, and there's so much it does for you that's good. It makes you learn empathy. It helps you communicate better. Your vocabulary increases. Your understanding of the world increases. Your ability, your social skills even increase from reading literature. So I think, people should read Dream Camp because it will just change your life for the better. It will bring, I want to use Nigeria speak, it will bring blessings and blessings upon them.
Let's talk about the legendary writer Chinua Achebe. You have been some sort of comparisons with your writing skills. How was he of perhaps an influence to you? What role do you think he played to create this pathway for you, perhaps?
Not in a direct way. Chinua Achebe's work is what mattered to me. Right? I met Chinua Achebe many years after I had started writing, and then I was actually too shy to even look in his face and say anything because I admired him so much. And in many ways, I did not need to meet him because his work had done it for me. His work had done everything. And what his work did for me when I started reading him, and I was quite young, was it gave me permission to tell my own stories. It made me realize that we do not have to write stories that are unfamiliar to us, that our own stories matter, and that they can be interesting, that they belong in literature, all of those things. Because when you're a child growing up and you're reading a lot of books from and about worlds that are not yours, it can make you start to think that is what books are. That books are things in which white people do things. So Chinua Achebe was one of the African writers who was very important to me because he gave me permission. His work gave me permission. And there are other kind of interesting coincidental things, such as that I grew up in the house in which Chinua Achebe had lived. Chinua Achebe and my parents were friends. And that, later, when I wrote Half of the Yellow Sun, he read the manuscript and had very kind words to say.
Spoken out about issues about this country and indeed the continent. So when perhaps you look at the current state of things in this country at this time, what worries you the most?
The suffering of ordinary people. Life has become so hard in Nigeria. And for me, I can see it. I can see it in, for example, how people who were formerly kind of securely middle class, and not that life was rosy for them, but they got by, are now people who beg and who I need. That worries me greatly. The level of suffering, how expensive food has become. I think that the biggest political judgment that one can make is about the ordinary lives of the people. So, when people say the stock market, personally, I don't really care about that sort of thing. What I care about is what's that person who has, almost a minimum wage job, how is that person getting on in this economy? It's the suffering that worries me the most. It's terrible. And I think when people, and it's not to excuse crime or anything, but I think that when life gets very hard, even people who before would not have considered certain things suddenly are willing to. And that's dangerous for society.
And then there's the question of leadership.
Yes.
It's such a big challenge in this part of the world, Nigeria and the continent.
Yes. Well, yes, because people who, yes, because people who don't win elections end up becoming people in office in Nigeria, and we all pretend that somehow that didn't happen. We're very good in this country at the art of pretense. We know what is true, but we don't say what is true, right? And but it's not even just that people who didn't win elections then take office. It's that when they take office, they don't make an effort. If I stole an election, I would go in there and I would try to win the love of the people by doing everything right, by being transparent, by putting people in my cabinet who are the best technocrats, by focusing on achievements of people, like real achievements. I would go out of my way to do well, right? To make life better. I would go out of my way to make Nigeria better, but it's just not happening. And leadership in the end makes all the difference. You have a leader who's committed, it can change. First of all, it sets the tone, just the tone alone. If you have a leader who's simple, who's transparent, who's open, who thinks about the people, who is not corrupt, without even actually doing anything, you see the people underneath him follow, because they realize my leader is not corrupt, I better not be corrupt because I'll get into trouble. That alone makes a difference. And we're saving money. If there's no corruption, I think that we've solved three-quarters actually of Nigeria's problems. So leadership is so important. I think it is really the most important thing. It's not about policies. It's not about the people often talk about Nigeria has so many we have so many natural blessings in the name of such things as we have gold in Zamfara, we have oil, we have tin, and all of that. You can have all of that. If you have a bad leadership, you're not going to benefit from it.
I'm not sure who you're going to be supporting during the elections in 2027.
Well, we don't know who's running yet, do we?
Because I know that you had this, I don't know if it's a relationship or you had supported Peter Obi.
Yes.
And now he's in the coalition. People say that Atiku perhaps would be president. Would you like to see him become vice president? Does he still have your support?
Let's go back to dream count.
Oh my word.
But I think what I will say about your question, and I don't, part of the reason I don't like to speak speculatively about things I'm not sure of, so we don't know who's a candidate. But I will say that my support for Peter Obi, right, is something that I do not hesitate to proclaim or talk about, because I can tell you what it is rooted in. My support for Peter Obi is rooted in my love for this country. It's rooted in my belief that with the right leader, we can be better than we are. We can create a country where people feel included, a country that is not corrupt and does not tolerate corruption. Again, if you have the leader who's setting the tone, it makes all the difference. And I think that he's also a person who, he doesn't need to be president. He wants to be because he cares about Nigeria, but he doesn't need to be. And that is a very important distinction. There are people who are desperate to become president, not because they have any good intentions for the country, but because of their own personal egos. And I think that distinction is so important, because you choose the right leader and you realize it's not about him. For Peter Obi, it's never been about him. Even as a person, his personality, I think, is very telling. He's one of the simplest men I have ever known, and I've known him for many years. And he is genuine and consistent. The person I knew 15 years ago is still the same person in terms of his values. And he's very curious. He wants to learn. And I think that's such a good quality to have in a leader. And also, there's a wonderful humility. We lack that in this country. There's a sense, I think, in Peter Obi that he's accountable to the people. He doesn't think that somehow he will lord it over people. Peter Obi is not a person who expects you to thank him for doing his job as a leader, because to him, it's his job. And so these are the reasons that I support him, and that I will continue to support him in whatever way I can. But I don't want to talk in specifics about how will I feel if he's not the presidential candidate. I don't want to think about that yet, because we don't know. We don't know what will happen.
Let me just take you back to 2022 when former President Muhammadu Buhari honored you with a particular award. You rejected it. Why?
Because my shelf is full of awards. There was no space for that one.
You're one of the fewest Nigerians who have rejected such a national honor.
Well, I don't think, I want to say clearly that rejecting the honor did not in any way make a statement about how I feel about the country. I love Nigeria. I have loved Nigeria for a long time. It was instead a statement about policies and in general a government whose work I was not impressed with. And I felt that that you don't just collect honors just so that you display them on your shelf. They have to mean something to you. And I should tell you actually that I didn't want that to be public, because I just didn't want, I had rejected it quietly, but something had happened, some miscommunication where maybe they didn't understand it, but they had then announced that I was accepting it. And so it became necessary to publicly say that I wasn't. And I say this because for me, it's not about it's not about noise making. It's just not something I wanted to be involved with, and I think that one has the right to choose what you want to align yourself with. For me, I have to believe in something before I can become part of it. And there are other things I've rejected quietly, you just don't know. And not just from this government.
Tell us. Talk to us about
No. The whole point of rejecting them quietly is I don't want to tell you about it. And not just from the Nigerian government, from other governments as well. There's certain things I just will not participate in. I need to sleep well at night, right? And if I do something that goes against my core beliefs, I just will not sleep well at night.
Well, I'm told that we have to round off this interview now. I understand you have a very busy schedule. Allow me to squeeze in just one final question. The young people make up more than 60% of Nigeria's population. There's the quick money syndrome. Some of them want to make money. As someone who perhaps can relate with that young population that we have in this country, I want you to talk to us. What's your advice?
My advice to you is, first of all, stop it. My second advice is I will beat you if you don't stop it. No, seriously. You know, that kind of quick money syndrome is, yes, it's a terrible thing, but it's the result of something bigger. It's because you're living in a society in which there is no hope. You're living in a society in which you cannot look and see a pathway that is reasonable, that can provide a good life for you. And so suddenly you believe in these schemes and things, but I think what I would say to young people is often they fail. I mean, there really is no free lunch. I mean, if you're going to do something quick that's going to get you money quickly, a lot of money, that thing is most likely criminal, and it just most likely will not work out. It's not, if you have sense, it's not the way to go. There's still things that one can do. I really believe in young people focusing on bettering themselves. I really believe in, accumulate knowledge, like learn, and then you might find in that you're learning small ways in which you can improve your life. But also just the idea of having a moral core, it's so important, right? It's important to have a sense of what is right and what is wrong. And your life really, there's something different about living a life in which you know that you have a moral core, you have a sense of morality. There's something meaningful about a life like that.
Dr. Ehosa Imaswe was Chimamanda's student at her first writing workshop in 2007, but now he is her publisher.
So it's that idea of being a fan first. So I read her first novel a year after it came out, the year that the Nigerian edition came out. At that time I was exploring fiction myself, and I was blown away by the quality of work that I read. There's this story I always tell of how my mother used Chimamanda to abuse me, She had read something, she was reading a Genevieve magazine and saw this lovely young woman who had beads in her hair and said that, I claim I want to be a writer, why can't I be a writer like this person who has written a book on gardening? Because popular Hibiscus felt like an horticultural textbook, yes. But it was a lovely argument that led me to where I am to today. And working with Chimamanda, being a publisher, not just licensing books, but being able to provide advice, being able to provide an eye, having a look at dream count at manuscript level and offering insights, however small. It's always a blessing. It's always really satisfying to see the success of this book 12 years after the last one.
Next, we join the author as she steps back into memories, driving for almost 2 hours to the prestigious University of Nigeria, Nsukka. It was here the seeds of vision and resilience were sown. She makes a stop at the Institute of African Studies, a facility that honors the legacy of the legendary writer Chinua Achebe. You have just told the Institute of African Studies. I wonder what your impression is.
Oh, very, very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging to see how they're trying to preserve and conserve and celebrate Chinua Achebe's legacy. So it's quite lovely. And this is a new one. I was here, the institute was in a different place and much smaller. So there's something about the ambition of this place that's also just I'm very happy, very moving, very inspiring.
Also, part of her engagement here is to visit her alma mater, a school she left over 3 decades ago. And that's why her arrival here creates a nostalgic whirlwind. The ambience here whisper stories of yesteryears as the feminist icon reconnects with the roots that nourished her literary genius. She walks through the corridors where she once dreamed. Inside the assembly hall, a mass hysteria erupts as the students and teachers are thrilled.
I am so happy to see you all. So happy. It's been 31 years. 31 years since I graduated from the secondary school. And I have not been back here since I graduated. So I'm very happy to be here. Very happy to be here. I want you always to work hard. Always do your best. And always try. So my most recent novel is called Dream Count. And I want you to remember that your dreams count. If you have any dreams, if you have any hopes, if you have any ideas of what you want to be in the future, work hard towards it. I'm standing here before you and you know me and you see me on TV, but it did not happen overnight. It happened from hard work. When I was a student here, I had already started writing. I was writing in my exercise books. I was writing whenever I had time, but also I was studying. I don't know if they told you that when I took the JSS, I got the best results in the history of the school at the time. I hope that somebody has beat, it has been 30 years, I hope somebody has beat my record. I hope somebody has beat my record. But I want you to know that whatever it is you want to be, you can be that thing if you work hard.
We catch up with Professor Emmanuel Okafoide, one of Chimamanda's teachers. He recounts memories as her intro-tech and technical drawing teacher.
I've heard a lot of her, and I said, okay, maybe one day I will still see her. So yesterday I was just going through my WhatsApp, and I saw the information about her coming. So I said, I must be here today. So I arrived here in the morning, and I said, I won't leave until she comes. So, and I'm happy, very grateful to God that she still looks very young. Even like when she was here, she was very brilliant. And in all the subjects she did, in short, she was an all-rounder. She was an all-rounder. So she did well in all of them, up to the work level. And we can see it. So her intelligence started from the beginning. It didn't just come by chance.
With a smile, bridging past and present, Chimamanda's homecoming becomes a testament to roots shaping wings. But how will this visit inspire Nsukka's young minds?
I feel glad and I'm so much excited to finally see the woman that wrote this amazing novel. I'm really inspired by everything she has done so far.
She's so wonderful and I want to be like her. Like how she speaks and her novels also is so wonderful and I would like to become who she is.
What's the feeling like for you guys?
I feel happy today. I feel excited. I can't even explain my feelings for meeting her today.
It's the same way I feel. It's a great privilege to meet such a legend. Yeah.
Actually, this is not the first time meeting her, but like this, I'm actually happy to see her today. Despite the fact I wasn't opportune to actually meet her one-on-one, but actually I'm happy. I'm so happy and excited.
Okay, I really feel happy today because I didn't expect her to come today. Like, I didn't expect her, like, to meet someone like this, you know, to meet someone like this. So she's actually a motivation to me. That's why I'm very happy.
I think she's the best. I just like her.
I'm feeling so happy and excited. Like, I was very happy when I heard she was coming because she's actually my role model. I've kept her as my role model in my heart, and I've longed to be with her, and I know I'll be like her very soon.
Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's homecoming tour is celebrating the release of her novel, Dream Count, her first in 12 years. But her return is not an end. It is just a beginning for stories, for voices, for a city rekindled in the glow of its daughter's global fire. What a life of impact and legacy. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's story is absolutely inspiring, especially for the continent's young population. And her story does it for us on this episode of the program from the International Conference Center here in the coal city, Enugu State, the region of her birth. I am Kelly Egiga, and I will see you again next time. Bye now.